Welcome to another episode of All Things Authentic. We're excited that you're joining us today. And I'm excited, as always, for this topic because it's a topic that we all need, and I think we probably need some reminders about. So we're in this culture now where a lot of us are accustomed to like the hustle and grind culture. But now there's this new emerging like soft life era culture. And so we're going to be discussing, which is better. Is one better than the other? I don't know. That's what we're going to be discussing. But kind of comparing and contrasting the hustle and grind culture versus the soft life era culture.
Yeah.
So it should be a good one.
I think so. I think it's time.
Yes. So some definitions.
I just have to say this before we get started. We are always twinsies.
Oh, the group.
You did not plan this. Go ahead.
Okay, and so we have some info about like hustle culture, just what that means, soft life. And then there's actually a dictionary definition of grind.
Yeah.
That you found. Yeah. So what did that say?
Okay, so, when I think about like the grind culture, hustle culture, like I have my own thoughts about what it is, but it was cool to go into Webster's dictionary and see what they say it is, like the actual definition. And what was said was that it's a dreary, monotonous or difficult labor, study, or routine, one who works or studies excessively.
Okay. Yeah. Excessively, monotonous,
dreary,
yes,
and basically difficult labor. So you're studying, you're working, and it is really excessive and it feels monotonous. It is dreary and it's difficult. It's a lot of labor. It's laborious.
Yeah.
If that's a word.
Mm-hmm. And then the hustle culture, grind and hustle are two different things, but the way we discuss it in culture is kind of like synonymous, right? The hustle culture, it's like maximizing output, really to earn more money, but at the cost of like well-being, right? So we're really like hustling. And I think like the grinding, maybe the biggest difference is that day-to-day monotonous stuff. Where hustle, a lot of people attribute the hustle culture to like literally their side hustle and stuff. So now we're living in a time where it's very difficult for people to just have like one main job. A lot of them are doing these side things. Yeah.
So it makes me think about like the hustle is like you are like you're hustling, you are like doing your best to try to make money. Essentially, that's what I think about it. Mm-hmm. And so you're doing whatever you can to get money. Yeah. And that's all these different kinds of ways, like maybe not just one desk job or 1 9 to 5. It's other things in addition to that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that'd be interesting. I know you have some stats for us later. I'm wondering if there was any stats on the amount of Americans who do have like side
hustle.
Now. Yeah,
you know what? We definitely should add that in. I don't think I did, but
yeah, I've seen it.
I feel like I've seen it before. It's
100%. Yeah. And then the soft life, and so a lot of us have heard this term more. Actually, I didn't know like the root of it when I was reading some stuff. I guess there was like a Nigerian influencer who kind of started discussing this a lot more. So, but the soft life prioritizes comfort, relaxation, and well-being over productivity and societal expectations. So more of an emphasis on like setting boundaries between work and personal life, which is like ideal, right? Yeah. So that sounds good. Like, soft life era, we should all be within that. But sometimes there's some caveats to that. And so I guess we'll discuss that. But just laying all those terms out for you kind of sets the tone of like what we are discussing and what we're talking about. It brings up this question of like, okay, which one's better? This hustle and grind culture or the soft life? And everyone has different perspectives, but what I've seen most is it's almost turned into this like generational thing. Right?
Generational divide.
Yeah, like millennials and maybe those for us are so accustomed to like hustle and grind, like we don't know anything else and we've just had to be, and so a lot think that like this newer generation, I'm not agreeing with this, I'm just stating what I gotta be careful just stating what I've been reading and stuff, but the newer generation is maybe too tapped into the soft life era where like they don't want to work hard or they don't want to work at all. And so that's why it kind of becomes this battle, like, which one's better? Right?
It's kind of sounding like, you know how it is when like every generation, they look back on the younger generation like, oh, y'all don't know work, or back in my day.
Yeah.
I just want to throw that out there.
Exactly, right? Well, obviously there's maybe pros and cons to both. But of course, many people argue that this hustle and grind culture is detrimental to us, but it also allows us to survive, right? So that kind of goes
survival
hand in hand.
piece. I think it's important, and you'll talk a little bit about what it means, particularly in our culture, like American culture and society.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess what do you think about that? Any of your own thoughts on like this hustle and grind versus, and is the soft life era something you've been hearing?
Yeah, I have been hearing the soft life like in the last couple of years. I grew up like in hustle culture or in the grind. And so, you know, it's interesting. When I was younger, I always imagined myself like as, I've always been ambitious, but when I like saw myself as an adult woman, I think it was with this like air of hustle and grind. And so it would be like, yeah, I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to go from this place to that place, and I'm going to be making money. Yeah. And I'm like, and in my mind, I would be doing all these different things as forms of income and making money. And I was going to be busy, busy, busy. And that's what I thought in my mind was like a successful person or a successful woman. And that's kind of what I thought I needed to do. And when I, you know, at this point in my life, I feel like, yeah, I always feel like I'm hustling, or I'm trying to figure something out, or I'm always like at least very much grinding and trying to make money. And recently, you know, the last couple of years with the soft life, I've really appreciated that. And I kind of feel like I got it wrong. I like the soft life, y'all. So, you know, and I get maybe the definition of it is, for me, it's like, in its intent, it's about a balance. And I think that I don't know that I ever really was attentive to the importance of like a balance. And I'm very much attentive to that now.
Yeah.
The need for it, at least.
Yeah, definitely. And that's probably one of the most important pieces with discussing these two sides of the coin, right? It is just like the balance with it. Yeah, similar. And I think even to this present day, I'm still trying to find that balance. I mean, I think I do okay now because I'm all about like work hard and play harder, right? Yes. Even though as we age, the play harder is getting a little more difficult, right? The type of play looks different now.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. But the one thing I'll say about the difference between my work hard and play hard now is that I have to add days in between the work and play. When I was younger, I could go hard, and then I wouldn't schedule no breaks. I had to go back to work hard. Yeah. But now, ain't no way.
Yeah, we need a break.
I have to break.
So, but I do believe in that and a balance. I think part of me still, I don't know if I align more with it. I think more I'm innately drawn to, which a lot of us are just innately drawn to, like the hustle and grind culture. Maybe one, we just have different goals and aspirations. Two, I think a lot of things were just modeled to us with how family and growing up and what expectations were. So sometimes I'll still catch myself in moments of, why am I doing all this? Yeah, I do. And I'm blessed that a lot of the stuff I do now, I enjoy doing, but sometimes it's still the thought of, I don't have to do all this, right? I could just come to work, see some clients, right? It's like, I didn't have to write books. We don't have to do the podcast, right? Like, because it still puts me in this predicament of like, more times than not, I always have something to do.
Yes.
Like always something, even around summer break now, but still like always something to do. And going back, even in grad school and stuff, I thought that like, oh, this is so hard. I can't wait till I'm done with grad school where I'll have nothing to do, where I'm on my own time. And now I've created this life where it's like, no, I'm still in that. But a lot of the stuff I do, it's my choice. I think that's like a privilege in itself. But sometimes I'm like, we can just chill for a little bit. So sometimes I'm still catching myself of like, goals, aspirations are fine. I don't have to do everything at once. And what would that look like for me to feel that I'm not like achieving something or going after something. And I'll pose that question to my clients sometimes who are also just like high achievers, and most of us don't know the answer to that. Like, what would your life look like if you're just relaxing and like not going after some goal or not achieving? And a lot of us are like, I don't know.
I was going to ask you because I struggle with that as well. Like the thought of not doing, like, I don't even know how to like sit still. Like it truly is like I'm always going to do something, even if I have nothing to do, which is really rare. That's just when my mind gets space to be creative. And then I'm like doing it, but then I'm like, the way that I'm being creative is usually like I'm hustling. I got hustle to it. And so I realized that I think we maybe share this experience, is that I think I was just raised in a culture, in multiple layers of culture, where you just like work, and you're always doing something. You're always being productive. And I think there are layers of our culture. I think just American society and culture, generally speaking, we are like a grind culture. We're always working. We have to be productive. I think compared to other industrialized nations, or I don't know if I should use that term. So just other nations, we work, like American workers work more hours. I think I was just looking at that, like maybe 47 hours a week compared to maybe the European Union, like 35 hours a week. So I think that's just what it is. It's American culture. And also I think about my identity as a Black woman, and I truly feel that also has an additional layer to being raised in a culture where you work and you work hard and you make things happen for yourself, for your family, for your people. Yeah. And I think just also generally just like the media and like pop culture, I do think, at least while we were growing up, there was a lot of, and I think there still is, like modeling of like grinding, hustling, and making your dreams come true and making a lot of money from it.
No, yeah. Because it's really like this badge of honor too. Yeah. Like grinding, hustling. We'll get into burnout, but almost being on the verge of burnout. Yeah. Right? It's like a good thing, or it's really not. But because of how our culture is set up, right? And it's interesting because even discussing and reflecting on this now, a lot of these things we discuss, it's like unnameable sometimes. And so even this aspect, I think it's literally just like this mindset that we have, consciously or unconsciously. Because don't get me wrong, there's plenty of stuff I do where I feel like I'm just wasting time, like Netflix shows, right? Like we have all the time at night, we watching shows, and I'm like, okay, I'm spending too much time on this. So there's plenty of moments for like downtime that I get. But sometimes in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, like we can be a little bit more productive. Like I can be reading or doing something more productive, which is true. But then it's, again, why is that a thought? Like what's wrong with, I don't want to sit and watch Netflix for like 48 hours straight, but it's a few hours a night of like, what is wrong with that? But I just innately, it's ingrained in a lot of us, especially for me. Like I need to be doing something productive.
Yeah, I think you keep saying it like productive. I do think that there's something in our society around productivity, and that we always have to be doing something productive, or we constantly feel like we have to be productive.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, it's good. Any other personal ideas with the hustle or something? I think like I'm trying to think of like personal, experiences with that I think would be helpful to share. But I will share it actually. So after fellowship, I took 3 months off before I started my new job, and it was honestly the best 3 months of my entire life. It was glorious, and it was the best I've ever felt emotionally. Now I have to work, so I balance that. But I think there was an ease to life, and there was a lot of just, I think, things that I was able to do during that time that were simple. Now, some of it was funny, actually, now, remembering things. After I finished fellowship, I laid on the couch for 2 weeks straight, like didn't do anything. That's all I did. I got sick afterwards, and it was just funny because I think my body had been used to like all of these years of hustle, of grind. And when I say hustle, because it wasn't just like, so
for background, I went to college, I went to get a master's degree, I went to, get a PhD, and then I had a 2-year postdoc fellowship, and that's not required necessary, right? So that was like 13 years of higher education and training. And I was like just going from one thing to the other. Now, granted, I like to party. And so when we have breaks, I'm partying hard and I'm traveling and, I'm just spending money I don't really have. But, my current me is paying for those decisions. But that's how I sustained myself. But all of it was very, very taxing and tiring. And so I didn't realize how tired I was and how much I just didn't have a break. Because on top of that, there were periods of time where I was also like trying to be creative, and I was hustling around that and doing all these different entrepreneurial creative endeavors on the side while I'm still trying to move all the stuff along. So I'm also hustling in that regard. So after fellowship, I was dead tired. And 2 weeks on the couch, I thought I was going to be partying. I was out. Then after that, I got to travel for a couple of weeks, and then I came back home, and that was like just chill downtime. I don't know what I did, but I can tell you that I was pretty like happy and like chill, and life was good. And then when I started my first like big girl job, I did that and I was bored. And then here we go. I think that's a part of the problem is like I was bored with life, and all I did was go to work and then come home.
Got it.
And I had nothing else like that I was doing. And it was weird to me. Like I didn't know how to be. And so for a little while it was cool because I was coming off of the softness of the 3 months off. But after a while I was like, what are you doing with your life? Like, you know what I mean? Like you need to go do more stuff. I need to get more jobs. I need to make more money. I need to work on other stuff. I need to be creative. And I ended up doing that. But I look back on that time period and I was like, I didn't even know how to appreciate what I want so badly right now.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to live in it.
Yeah. And it reminds me of a piece of that definition of grind, like the monotony, right? That sticks out so much because a lot of Americans aren't wanting that, which a lot of our days turn into that monotonous routine. But it sounds like I think some of us, and how you're discussing, might kind of still have an aversion from that. Like we can still be in the grind, but when it gets too monotonous, that's unsettling for a lot of us too.
Yeah. I think so. I think the monotony is like when you go, for me at least, go do the same thing over and over again, and it's hard work. But I will say that, that first job wasn't hard work. It was monotonous. It was boring to me. But I wouldn't even say that I was grinding then. I was just working. Yeah. And I think I had a struggle with just working. That as I was just working, I would tell myself like, okay, you have no purpose. Like, what are you doing? You got to like get your purpose. You have all these things you need to work on. And then I also realized that I just couldn't because my body was exhausted. So I just wouldn't. But in my mind, I was like telling myself like, you're not doing enough.
Yeah. So really trying to find that balance of like just the working was like, that's a little too boring. But then like full soft life where you're just like relaxing, but relaxing too long. A lot of us are like, okay, I'm a little bored now. Like what's in between?
Yeah. I have more stories, but I want to just stop there and like give you like what are your stories with this?
I don't even know.
Come on.
No, I'm sure I have. So I think I'm thinking back to, so even like childhood, because again, it's kind of how you're raised, not just societal culture, but your own like family culture too. And so I think I'm just used to always doing stuff on the go.
Yeah.
Even to this day, right? I feel like my mom's she's retired now somewhat, but always doing something. I'm like, can you sit down somewhere? So
I can't.
So when I look at myself, I don't think I'm as extreme. I'll sit and watch some TV for a while, but still that innate nature is similar, right? Like always doing something, getting up and doing something. Even childhood, when nap time was like acceptable, right? At least in my household, probably like toddler years or something, but growing up teenage years and stuff, like taking a nap, maybe, but I always remember even feeling weird, like, I'm taking a nap. Like, oh, they came home, the door open, let me act like I'm doing something. Because it was just that
door open.
I'm like, oh, they're home now. And so, but it's funny to think back of small moments like that I can remember, but then relate it to like how I operate today, right? Where it's like no time for stuff, like get stuff done per se. But I think I found a decent balance of like the soft life. And if we're being honest, like we don't have to, but for us to be like good clinicians in the work we do, it's helpful if we can. Because a lot of these things we're preaching to our clients of like self-care and finding a balance and stress management and stuff. And so we're having to like practice that for ourselves. But we try.
And by do, I meant we do try to practice it. We do have to practice it. It's not easy.
But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing now is when I still have those reflections of like, do I need to be doing all this stuff?
Yeah.
I maybe want to, but like, what would it feel like to just not do a lot of different things, right? And I think, and again, it's hard to say because we always say, when this happens, right? Once I get out of grad school, I'll have all this time and I won't book up my calendar. Wrong. So we always think when this event happens, maybe we'll slow down.
Yeah.
Right now, my thing is, because I think I have the luxury right now to do it. I'm not tied down to, I don't have kids or anything, right? So I can just like achieve these goals and do all these things without having to think about like other aspects or consequences. So, but I say, maybe once we do start a family, I would think, I would think like, okay, I can just chill, at least for a little, all right? Like I've done at this point in my life, I've achieved a lot of goals, done a lot of things, no regrets. So maybe that would be like my whole focus. Things will actually probably get busier then, but as far as like my own goals and stuff, like there's no rush. I can just chill and like focus on this new chapter of my life. So we'll see if that actually
hold you to it. I would help you right? encourage that. I think that would be important, and it's interesting when it happens, and sometimes people are really good at it, and sometimes folks are not.
Yeah, definitely.
The life kind of, be life in.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess even discussing like what kind of gets in the way of one side or the other, like the hustle grind culture versus the soft life era, because in the middle, there's just some realities of both sides, I think. So obviously we don't need to make people more upset by discussing like inflation that's going on in society, right? We won't touch on that too much, but clearly it's looking rough out there for the economy. And just for the average American, right? So inflation, these are extremely high. And so thinking about the impact that has on society. So when we think about people getting out of this hustle and grind culture, yes, to some extent, but a lot of us look like and say, do I have a choice? All right. Like I have to work 2 jobs. Some people I have to work 3 jobs. Like I have family to feed. So with the inflation, and just our capitalistic culture, our capitalistic culture operates on us pretty much having this mentality of like, work, hustle, grind, make money, and do it all again. And if you're not following that route, like, you don't belong in this society, right? And that's kind of unfortunately how our society operates. So kind of thinking about those impacts, like the culture we're in, capitalistic, individualistic, inflation, all these factors. When you think about people hustling and grinding, we need to survive as humans, and sometimes survival is unfortunately hustling and grinding, right? And a lot of people who are in that survival mode will probably tell you like, yeah, soft life sounds nice, but like soft life isn't going to pay my bills, right? Yeah. But again, that balance of like, it doesn't have to be completely the soft life era. It doesn't mean you're not doing anything. It's just what's that balance look like? But I've had a lot of clients tell me like, this balance thing is impossible, right? Like they feel it's either one or the other. And I think that's a difficult thing to find.
I think so too. I think you bring up really important points, like just all of this is embedded in a context, and that societal context because like it's very real and challenging to navigate because there are like real needs that have to be met. And, you know, how else do you pay your bills sometimes? Like if the job you have isn't enough and you need more money, you know, and that is just kind of, I think, some of the things that Americans and just people in general are left to contend with.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the biggest piece of this, trying to somewhat find this balance, trying to decipher between a couple of things. So, one, deciphering between our need for survival, which is just a common need that we have. But this other side of it is deciphering between our need for like approval, sense of self-worth, that productivity, right?
Yes.
So it's like, yes, obviously we all need to survive. Some of us maybe are still operating out of my productivity equates to my worth, and that's why I'm doing all these things.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction because obviously survival is survival and you do what you got to do to survive. And also how many of us have been socialized, I think impacts our self-worth, how we see ourselves. And just, I think what productivity means that's like really ingrained in us. And so I think that sometimes it feels like there's no other way but to do this. And you feel like, and this is how I survive. And maybe to some degree that could be true. And also there might be some ways in which some folks could do things a little bit differently and make different decisions about the kind of life that they want to live, perhaps. Or recognize how ingrained being productive and grinding is in sort of like their sense of self and their sense of identity and who they are. And kind of deconstruct that in order to make different decisions so that they don't have to grind so much and don't have to deal with some of the consequences of grinding so much.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think it's hard to recognize, like, how do folks walking around every day just living their life even recognize that grinding and being productive is so ingrained in their personalities or their identities or their sense of self or sense of worth are connected to it? Like, how would you know?
Yeah. And that's why I think this conversation is important because then people can really reflect on like what their intentions or motivations are. Because, you know, it's not really a conversation about like working less. I mean, hopefully we all want to work a little less. But again, we're in this capitalistic society. We have to survive. So it's less a conversation about like, how do we work less, but how do we be intentional about the way we're living, right? And that's like that balance of the grind hustle, but also the soft era, the soft life era. The good thing about it is it does allude to like intention with how we're living and while we're balancing like work and stuff. So I think people having to question the why to a lot of like why they're doing all these things. Is it survival? Is it need for approval, for sense of self-worth and productivity? Is it learned behavior? And some of my clients too, it can actually be like a trauma response to that like busyness. And so I know I had a client before work so many hours a week, so many, and very much in this caregiving, caretaker role for her family. She's just been used to doing that. But work like 60, 70 hours a week and just the mentality that like, I just have to do what I have to do. But when we started digging into more information, it's like, actually, you don't have to do this. It's not even connected that much to survival. It's connected more to like, this is your distraction from going home, right? To face like difficult stuff. And in essence, kind of a trauma response of which you've been accustomed to. So I think people really having to question their intentions with some of this hustle and grind.
I think that maybe for other people out there, like that kind of story may be similar for lots of folks. Which may be helpful to think about, like, why can't we not busy ourselves? Meaning, like, why can't we stop or do less? I think, like, if you think about, and this is also coming from personal, but also seeing other people, whether it be in practice or out in the world, just personally, is like telling folks to stop or just slow down. Like sometimes I get such a huge reaction from people, and even from myself. I remember one time someone had told me to like, I think go do yoga or something. It was like 20 years ago. And I was like, I can't sit still and do nothing, or go meditate or something. And I was like, I can't do that. Like I can't sit still and do nothing, or I can't slowly move my body. And I had to realize like that was connected to something else because I could do it. And now I love it. Like it is amazing to me. And so I think it takes sometimes a lot of introspection to see like what some of this busyness, grinding, productivity is really connected to for you yourself. And then decide like, should I shift? Do I want to shift? And how can I shift?
Yeah, definitely. And so there's psychology with a lot of these, and mostly too, I think a lot of what we're discussing when we're too heavy on like the hustle and grind ultimately just leads to this concept of burnout.
Yeah.
Right. And so I know we'll discuss that with some of the psychology, but that's where we try to find the balance of too much hustle and grind just leading to burnout, which we think is like this badge of honor. It proves to others, I'm working so hard, I'm so burnt out. Which just isn't a good thing for us mentally, emotionally, and our bodies physically. Also.
It's exhausting, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for tapping in to All Things Authentic. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. For full episodes, find All Things Authentic on your favorite podcast listening platform.